So when you're trying to develop a new product, you're going through that design, you're trying to develop it. How do you get that deep customer insight? Well, there's several ways to do it. And market research is probably the #1 way to do it. So it's the gateway to our downstream customers. So how? How do you do it? The pros and cons here. So we have several techniques of doing that. So we have customer surveys. I would imagine that all of you have taken a customer survey at one point. For example, the student evaluation of instruction, which hopefully you give all your professors a rating of 5, or the highest rating you can. These surveys are used to understand your opinions. And that's all they're for. They're usually just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sometimes they're up to 7 or 10. And they're usually just quick things because they're just trying to get some basic information or real quick information. Then we have focus groups. So this is where we bring in people. So we have usually between, let's say, 4 and 14 maybe. And then we have a moderator who's going to kind of guide the discussion, make sure everybody stays on track. But they're going to kind of let the discussion develop as it goes. And they'll present the new product and kind of guide and understand what the customers think of it. Then we have our expert panels. Well, what better way to understand certain things, when you get a bunch of experts in there? For example, have you ever been to maybe one of the sessions on the campus where they bring in these experts and you can sit there in the audience and listen to what they're saying? So they might be, titans in business, where they've graduated from the university and they've done so well and they've given back to different causes. Maybe they've given back to the university, and maybe they've given back to a scholarship fund that you might have received. Or is it just experts in certain things? Like, are they experts in the supply chain field? Or are they experts in marketing? Are they experts in economics, accounting? These expert panels are usually focused on a certain technical or specialized area. And they're trying to get opinions when you're a company trying to get, these insights from these experts. Then we have in-depth interviews. So these are one-on-one discussions. And you're trying to understand. Think about, don't maybe think of it as a job interview, but it's more focused on trying to understand the person. But it's more in depth. But you get more confidence that you're getting into the right direction in understanding your customers because you're spending more time with them. You're able to follow down a certain path. Let's say the individual in the in-depth interview made a comment and you want to know more information about that comment. You can ask them, well, what did you mean by this? And then they can elaborate. So all of these are traditional market research methods. But then we go into observational approaches. So we have shadowing. So shadowing is observing in real life how people use a product. So if you think about kids with toys, you put a bunch of these toys in a room and let loose some kids, and in that room there might be some video cameras, with a parent's permission, of course. And the cameras are watching how the kids play with the toys. Are the kids destroying the toys? Are they breaking the toys? Do they not even seem interested in the toys? Do they want to play with different toys? Are all the boys playing with the toy and none of the girls are? Or, how is it breaking down? And you can also do this in a day-to-day setting. You can have somebody, let's say a researcher, follows somebody around. You ever heard of job shadowing? This is essentially the same thing. You're going around and you're observing. But then we have a lot more confidence is the ethnographic studies. It's a lot more expensive because you're basically immersing yourself in the culture. For example, if you wanted to learn Chinese, Mandarin, and let's say you only speak English, and you want to learn the entire Chinese culture and language, well, one way to do it is to drop you in the middle of China, right? That's the best way to learn language, being surrounded by, immersed in the language. But doing that, other than being more expensive and you're in there with no support, you can see how the culture is, the lifestyle, the attitudes of the people. You can start to learn about the social context of people, why they choose certain products over another. You can see all these things, but when you sit down with, say, a group of people and you ask them, well, why do you go to the local market instead of Walmart? They might not be able to tell you, but if you sit there and you're immersed in the culture, immersed in their traditions and lifestyle, they might be able to say, oh, yeah, that's because I want to support the local farmers. But they might not have thought of that. But you see, that might be the culture, or the way things are done there. Now, I use China as just an example. You can say drop a person in the middle of Germany, or Egypt, or Russia, or any other country that you want to pick on the face of the earth. It can be anywhere. Drop you in the middle of the jungle, the rainforest, anywhere. That's how these type of studies are done. But let's get into the pros and cons. The confidence is low when it comes to surveys. Some people will just start picking random numbers on surveys, even though they have the time to put some effort into it. They won't. Or you can go as far as the high confidence of the ethnographic studies, where you have extremely detailed data. You're 100% confident that you have the right data. But then on the other end, we have the cost. Surveys are cheap. Right? They're extremely cheap. Right now, I could probably send out a survey, pay $5 and get 1,000 responses. And those people probably weren't even compensated for the survey. But if you want higher quality responses, you need to start looking at the focus groups, the expert panels, the in-depth interviews, the shadowing, and then ultimately the ethnographic studies, because the cost increases to get that better confidence. So you have to balance, where does that break-even point work for you and your company? But we have some digital tools for all this. We can do all this in person, but what's some digital tools? You know, we live in a digital world. Well, we can profile our customers. How do we do that? Well, there's loyalty cards. You know, when you try to save money going to the grocery store, you might swipe a loyalty card to save 5 cents on, you know, the drink that you just bought. Because if you use your card, you get a discount. Could be something as simple as that. Could be as simple as, you know, your credit card is tracking that you've gone to Walmart or Aldi or, you know, Giant Eagle. Could have gone that way. So all these little data points are starting to build a profile of yourself. But then we can move on to crowdsourcing. So we have a lot of information being processed by a lot of people. For example, they wanted to analyze this virus that's going around right now. Well, one computer would take probably 1,000 years to do the data analysis that they wanted. But if they were to break it into little pieces and give it off to multiple computers through programs called, for example, folding at home, well, your computer can run a little piece of that and send it back in. And if you think about it, if you multiply that by thousands of computers, home computers, your laptop, for example. Well, now you don't need a supercomputer to do that. That's one example of crowdsourcing. But what if we were to do it differently? You probably heard of crowdsourcing and crowdfunding. Well, people will put money towards ideas they think are good. So people will support the good ideas and they'll give actual money towards those ideas. But the ideas they don't feel are good, they're not going to fund. Same kind of thing. The power is in the people there. So that's a couple views of crowdsourcing. You're using a group of people to help accomplish something or make a decision. And then we have our social network analysis. Well, our social network analysis, take, for example, it was in the news a couple years ago where Facebook was analyzed. I think it was around 2015-16, where Facebook analyzed the way people would vote based on their Facebook profiles. I think the company was called something similar to data analytics or something. Anyway, it was a huge scandal because a social network company let another company use their data for this kind of analysis. Now, that analysis might have been innocent at the time when it was developed, but how the people used the data that the analysis came up with might not have been ideal. Well, everybody goes into things with the best of intentions, but that doesn't mean it's going to end up with the best of intentions. So whether you choose to use social networks or not, that's up to you. But that's one way we can figure out what's going on, how we can understand our customer. For example, if they're all about Jeep Wranglers because they like going off-road, well, that would probably be identified in a social network analysis because they're a member of a Jeep Wrangler club. They are pictured with their Jeep Wrangler, and so on and so forth. You can kind of see a pattern when you look at people's Facebook profiles, for example. Or you look at their Twitter and see what are they tweeting about. Or their TikTok, or their Instagram. What's the common theme? You can pretty much see that kind of thing. So how is this technology providing that insight? Well, it's giving a very accurate picture of who we are because we're making that information public. Whether that's for the best or not, that's up to you. Some people don't care, some people do care. But this kind of data helps with our market research and to understand our customers. So hopefully this gives you a better idea of getting a deep customer insight in how your customers think and what they may want as a product, or how to understand your customer and what they want in a product. So next we're going to talk about the end-to-end product development process. So I look forward to seeing you on that video.